everybody, I'm Tim. Hey, it worked. Terrific, terrific. How y'all doing? All right. I hope you've seen some good content today. Those of you who know me, my name is Tim, or those of you who don't know me, my name is Tim Mangan. My company is Emergent Technologies. I do primarily training around packaging, particularly in AppV and now MSIX. We do a little bit of consulting. We brought our entire company here today. So I'm here. Mary Jane's in the front row, trying to keep me honest. What I am is a big believer in community. And when I first started coming out here to the Netherlands, I heard about this event because I live in the United States. So we're clueless on a lot of stuff. I was really excited about this event. This is a terrific event for our particular industry, and it certainly is the best thing that's out here in Europe, and I'm really glad to be here every year. But I am a big believer in community. A lot of what I do is all around trying to make you folks more successful. And what is great is when we have a lot of people helping supply that type of information. So to all the speakers that were here today, I'd like to say thank you for sharing with us. You can join me in that. As well as the sponsors. I mean, we need some folks to help pay the bills, so you don't have to pay so much to be here. And those folks have generously helped make this event happen. And they've brought their technical people here as well, so that you can ask them the questions and understand the latest stuff in their products. And we really need to thank those sponsors as well. And then finally, thank you to all of you, for coming here in this event. Yes. For coming here to this event and for the things that you do. There's so many of you I see around. And I know your blogs, right? So you're out, you're blogging, you're sharing with other people and help other people understand some of the things that you have learned. And that's what makes the community really work. And that makes all of our lives so much better. So thank you very much. Yeah, we should probably thank PDS for putting this together, huh? Thank you, Kurt, and Odette, and Irvin, and Roger, and Danny, and Adrian, or Odd, depending on how you want to call it. Right? All right, so tell me if you've heard this one before. Packaging, such a problem. Such a problem. Just a waste of time and money, and we really shouldn't be doing this stuff. Have you heard that over the last few years? Yeah, okay. How do you feel about that? Okay, all right. So, what do we do with that? We've been getting these messages that come out that we're wasting our time and our energy, that these enterprises should just leave it to the end users and let them do their own thing. And that is not what you've been doing. And from everything I hear, that's not what you want to have end users doing. So one of the concerns we have to have is what happens when the C-level executives hear those types of messages. And you need to defend, why are we doing what we do today? What's the purpose of it? So you need to be a little bit prepared for that. So why does the enterprise repackage applications? Well, they repackage applications to make it easier for the end users. We want to get the applications prepared properly and configured so that they can be productive as soon as possible. We also want to keep them from messing up their systems, quite frankly. So we want to take care of a lot of those things. We want to reduce the number of help tickets and the time they're spent with a downtime waiting for the app to get repaired so that they can use it. We also use it to control licensing costs, and that's very, very important in our companies. Right? And in the end, it's all about saving money and not costing money. You shouldn't be looking at the IT application preparation and deployment technologies as costing your organization's money, because you are saving money by doing so. And we might need to remind people about that a little bit. So one of the things that I like to do is talk about the cost of packaging. All right? And the size of your organization matters in this, because the more users that make use of that thing that you packaged, if you're packaging for just 2 people, that's going to cost you money. But if you're packaging for hundreds or thousands, or in some places tens of thousands, the amount of time you spend getting that right up front is more than paid for by the amount of downtime that you're avoiding. Okay? And ultimately, that is the bottom line. Wrong key? Okay, there we go. So the first thing that we can do is, one of the things we need to do is to sort of assess that cost. And as part of that, you need to think about the people you're serving in your organization and what type of users they are. 10 years ago, we had a lot of users who, quite frankly, were pretty clueless when it came to computer technology. And in most of our organizations, they've gotten a little bit better. We've got a lot of younger workers that feel comfortable with technology coming in the door. But our practices have been largely aimed at the first category. And quite frankly, we don't have so many of them. These newer folks are comfortable with the technology. This guy over here, if something doesn't work right, he's going to immediately be on the phone with the help desk, not doing his productive work. But chances are, whatever it is, because we do a decent job of controlling things, it's going to be really simple for that first level help desk person to take care of, and they can get them back productive quickly. These folks here are comfortable with the technology. They're going to, if they have an error, what they're going to do is they're going to say, let me just try to reboot, try it again, right? That's what they're going to do. They're not going to call the help desk right away. And if they still have the problem, then they'll call the help desk. Right? They're happy, they're comfortable with the technology, but they're not going to dig in too deeply with that. Now, many of our users have gone from here to here, but we still need to serve this type of model. So this model really works well as we think about the parts of our organization such as call centers, where uptime is really important when it comes to cost. As I deliver applications to that group of people, I want those applications rock solid. I want to strip down as much functionality as possible. The vendor delivers an app with 5 different features. That person only needs 1 of those 5 features. If I make those other 4 features available to them, at some point they're going to click on them, and there's probably going to be a help desk call, and they're not serving the customers they're supposed to be serving, and that costs us money. So that's why we spend time getting these applications right. Now, we also have a third group. These are the people who think they got it, and they know it, right? These are the higher-end workers that are very, very comfortable with technology. When they have a problem, their model is very different from that other group. Oh, no, 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 no. They're going to see the problem. They got admin rights, probably. They're going to go in. They're going to try to fix that problem. And they wouldn't even consider calling the help desk until about 2 weeks after the problem first occurred. During all this time, they're not doing that thing. And, oh, by the way, they probably tried a few things that didn't work and made things worse. And when they call the help desk, there isn't a chance they're going to confess to any of that. I don't know, just stopped working. All right? And that's the reality. So you have to understand who your workers are, and that's going to affect sometimes the way you package, but it also affects those costs, right? This guy is probably a very expensive person too. So the time he wasted for that 2 weeks is not good. Okay, we can try to quantify some of this stuff. We can take a look at downtime. You've got systems in place to get you a number of tickets. You can take a look at the number of people affected by a particular type of outage and how long it took to get the thing fixed. So you can try to put some numbers to that. Let's face it, numbers are always going to be kind of hokey as you try to come up with numbers like that. But it's good to have something in your pocket to be able to say, okay, look, this is what it's costing us when we do things badly. What was that slide? Oh, yeah, that was that slide, right. Right, so that mean time to repair becomes very important, right? Because the costs escalate English must be my second language, I think. Pretty sure one of those computer languages is my first. All right, then we have the other rogue costs that we might have to think about, right? Those of you who have ever been hit with a licensing audit, those are very expensive, the malware attacks. We don't necessarily want end users installing and updating their own applications. We prefer that IT be in charge of that to make sure they have the right tools and that our systems are a little bit safer than they would be otherwise. So those are some of the reasons that we would be wanting to make sure that our application mix as we deploy out to the desktops are in good shape. Okay, so how do we go about doing that? Number one, and I think large organizations are really good at this, and smaller organizations I find not so much. But you need to start at the very beginning. As we get requests from the organizational groups within your organization that say, hey, we need this application, there should be a formalized process for that if you don't have one today. And you should be doing some work with those requests from the very start, and not just take them blindly and say, okay, we'll go do that. All right? You want to review the request. You want to look at other applications that you may already have in your organization that might meet the same need. You want to maybe review the vendor and see if they're a vendor that is constantly having to patch their software for security issues. That might not be the right vendor to bring into your organization. Right? Quite often, the end user group making a request for a particular application, they're doing it without ever thinking about the other choices they have. They're not doing a bake-off themselves and then saying, this is the one we want most of the time. It's generally, they saw something, they liked it, they put in the request. Might not be the best option for your organization. And somebody in the IT group needs to take a look at that and try to rationalize it a little bit. Then we have different ways to get the packages together and organized and ready to go out. We can do the MSI thing. We can do the AppV thing. Yay, yay, yay. Sorry. Letting my biases show there. We can do the app layering thing. So I know we have some folks here that are using Citrix in their shop. So the Citrix app layering is popular in that area. Or VMware, they've got their cloud volume thing, the similar thing. And of course, we got MSIX, the new kid on the block, which is hoping to overcome all of those and be the only kid on your block at some point in the future, right? Might have a little bit of a ways to go, but promising start so far. But we've got these different choices, and we don't have to stick with just one, right? We can try to use the right tool for the right job. And where it makes sense to use one, you use it. Where it makes sense to use another, you use that as well. But one thing I will see, particularly in large organizations, I see this mostly with Citrix. They have configuration manager over here, and they do MSI repackaging. And then we've got a Citrix Zen App, Zen Desktop group over here, and they do their own app packaging, and the two don't talk to each other, and they repackage the same apps and have to learn the same hard lessons about what's wrong with this app and how do I make it work and all the things. It's the same thing in both cases, and they're not really sharing. So that's an area that we need to take more attention to when we have that and try to avoid that. Get the groups working together to some fashion to avoid that duplication of effort. So MSI packaging, I mean, technologically very stable. Nobody's changing MSI right now. Very mature tooling available from all of the vendors, many of whom are here today. An entry-level packager can do a decent job in creating a package. But when it comes to MSI packaging, it usually takes years of experience for them to become a great packager. There's no real recipe for how to gain that experience. You have to stub your toe from time to time and find out, here's how I have to go about cleaning up that package before I release it, because I captured some things that I shouldn't have, right? And that just takes experience. AppV, technologically stable, right? We're getting fixes, but that's about it at this point. The primary tool to do that work is the Microsoft sequencer tool. We can do it also from the third-party vendors. So, and what I tell customers is, if you're using that tooling and you want to use it for AppV, that's great. If you're not using that tooling, I wouldn't necessarily go out and buy one of those tools. I would probably stay with the Microsoft product, because I think the Microsoft sequencer does probably the best job out of the box. An entry-level person will be a little bit confused in doing AppV. I think, quite frankly, they need some training. Self-promotional plug, they need training. They need training. Okay? What AppV does that I really like is that it remediates a lot of old application behaviors to work in the modern operating system. And it does it without you having to think about it. It has its quirks, no doubt. You need to learn what those quirks are to do a great job on the packaging. But out of the box, you can take a lot of applications that just don't work well on Windows 7 or Windows 10, and AppV just says, oh yeah, I see what you're doing. I'm just going to do this over here instead. And it kind of works. And that's what I really like about it. Comes to app layering, their technology there is still a little bit young. There's kind of two forms of app layering. One form I refer to as the smart way to do MDT image builds. Right? So rather than start from scratch, install the operating system, and have all these scripts that dump in these additional applications to build your image, you build your base image, and you take that image, and then you run through the special process to add one application in, and it creates a separate VHD that just layers on top of that. And you set that aside, and you go get the next one, you get the next one, you get the next one, and when you want to build your image, you either, depending on the technology vendor you're using, push a button and it smashes them all back together and you get one image with all that stuff in it. And now when you want to patch the operating system level, you just push the button again afterwards and smash it back together and get the new set there without touching the apps. The other version of that is more of a dynamic version that at boot time these things come together. And they usually have a secondary mode that it can happen during user logon so that you can do per user style implementations. Now, the app layering stuff is good at getting the bits in place, but it really isn't doing an isolation. And particularly that per user session based mounting that they're doing doesn't quite do the integrations right for a lot of apps. The other problem we'll see with app layering is that sometimes as you go from a major build change from one version to another, say like from Windows 1809 to 19H2 when we see that, you probably have to go back and touch all of those app layers and rebuild them. That again is one of the reasons I love AppV. I never have to do that. It's great. All right, MSIX. I'm going to call it technologically incomplete. It's still being built. It's going to take a little more time to get all the pieces out. We're going to see the tooling from Microsoft, as well as we're already seeing tooling from the third-party folks. At this point, I would guess that a few years from now, I'm probably going to be happier with the third-party tooling packaging tools. We'll see how that shakes out. Right? Microsoft has a great opportunity to include some of the neat stuff that they're doing directly in their tooling. We're not seeing it yet. I don't know if it's going to come in the future, but we'll see how that rolls out. Right now, it takes a high level of technical skill to produce a lot of good MSIX packages. I mean, if the apps are good apps, it doesn't matter which of the techniques you take. They're going to package up really easily. But those other ones, we are probably, I think in June next year, going to be running our 100th training class on AppV. Well, now it's AppV and MSIX, but of the training classes we do. I usually see the top packagers from companies come into that class. I would guess that while all of those that came out of the class can be great AppV packagers, there's probably only 10 to 20% right now that could be truly great MSIX packagers, given the amount of effort it takes to produce those good packages. It's too much effort. It will get better over time. We'll get things that detect scenarios and help us get the fixes in place without having to be an expert and go down to that level of trace where you're looking at, oh, this particular file is having a problem here and I have to go fix that file access directly. The tooling should take care of a lot of that stuff for us automatically. That'll just take some time for everyone to build up those capabilities. When AppV5 first came out, Microsoft released it. We had 4.6, so we had something in place we could continue to use. 5 came out. We looked at it, and quite frankly, for the first year and a half, my advice to customers was, you should be looking at this technology. This is the future. But probably not production right now. There's some things that we still need to have. And we saw some folks go ahead and implement, and they struggled with it a little bit. And at the end, I think they were probably wishing they had waited a little bit longer before they did that. I think we're in that same boat with MSIX, quite frankly. You need to be looking at it. It is the future, probably. I got to say probably, right? But I believe it is the future. And you're going to need to up some skills in some cases, probably. But you don't necessarily need to be deploying out into production today. I'm getting contacted by customers saying things like, hey, we'd like to have you come in and teach us and do a project to convert all of our applications over to MSIX because we want to put it on the 2019 H2 release and we want it out by January 1st. And I just have to go to the customer and say, no, it's not going to happen. I'm not going to set you up for failure like that. You're not going to get all of your apps ready to go in MSIX in that time frame. It's just too hard right now. So, we need to have those expectations set sometimes. Okay. What I do like in the work that we do is knowing your app. So I threw some numbers up there that I got off the internet, so it must be true, right? 35 million application titles, greater than 175 application versions. Source Microsoft. Cool. I'm not sure who at Microsoft because there's so many people, but somebody at Microsoft apparently said that at some point. Some other numbers here about App Store apps and the number there, because this is growing every year when they do these charts. So there are lots and lots of applications out there. It is impossible for you to know all of the apps. But there are some things that you can do to understand them better. And that's been the big part of my emphasis with the AppV packaging over the last few years. And I even go to the point of saying, if you're going to package something up in MSIX, please do the following. Package it up in AppV. You don't have to worry about whether or not that package is any good. You just run through the sequencer. It's a similar kind of next, install, next, save the thing off type of experience we would see with the MSIX packaging tool. But then you take a free tool of mine called AppMeManage, and you ask it to analyze that package. And what we do is we take a look at the various ways that that application interfaces with the operating system and with the end user, particularly looking at the APIs. And those are the parts that become problem as you try to take that package and run it in a different environment. So we've always been concerned with that with AppV, but knowing that information becomes critical to speeding up the resolution to know how to use things like the package support framework to fix those issues in MSIX. So that's why I recommend it. Having processes in place. I think a lot of organizations have gotten really good in terms of their application preparation and delivery, of having some good written practices in place, and consistency from when one person does the job and the other person does the job. Okay, I said that a little facetiously. All right. Yes, there are procedures written down. Is anybody following those procedures? Maybe not so much, right? It's important. I have a big philosophy as part of the packaging piece that I say that we need to have reproductive rights. If you produce a package, there should be some documentation with it such that somebody else in your organization could reproduce the same package you have, right? So that if you end up coming to this conference here today and they need to repackage a new version as an emergency thing today while you're here at the conference, somebody can pick that up, look at your instructions, and say, okay, here's what I do, boom, 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 and have a good package. Right? Nobody does that very well. Right? Even when you think you do, turns out you don't. We usually tell customers that, for the first few packages, you get your packaging team on this new technology, you should have someone package it, just give those instructions or directions of what they did off to somebody else and ask them to reproduce the package. Because I can guarantee you that person will come back and start asking questions. What is this? I tried this, it didn't work. Or, I just don't understand the instructions, right? That's the type of thing that happens, and once they get that feedback once or twice, they start doing a much better job of that documentation. I also believe in testing early and often. So I come from a developer background. When we build the products, we have a very simple rule, okay? The sooner it takes, all software has bugs, right? The sooner it takes from the creation of the bug to somebody finding the bug reduces the cost of getting that bug fixed. So we want our developers to be building and testing their own stuff immediately. We're going to take that, we're going to go into usually some type of daily, weekly builds that we have some other people looking at that software while we're still building that next release. And so they'll find a bunch of stuff hopefully quickly, and the developer will remember what they did in the last week and then get it repaired. And as we get closer to the release, there'll be some more detailed testing that goes on, and we'll get that out. But you get to the point that it starts to get out into customers' hands. It starts to become really expensive, right? So that's the model. And I've always applied that to the packaging as well. When we're packaging, we're creating bugs too, right? We're either bringing them along with us or we're creating them on the fly because we make mistakes too. And so getting that testing to happen early and often is important. As soon as somebody packages it, they should be testing that to some level. And they should be understanding something about the app so that they can do a better job of that testing. When they're done, the next level of testing should happen fairly soon. We should try to make sure that that's scheduled. I always tell them, when they start the packaging project, the first thing they should do is they should be talking to the application expert that's going to approve the app in the end. Right? Talk to them, say, hey, I'm working on this app, and I'm going to be repackaging it. It's funny how many times you get something back like, oh, while you're there, could you take care of this problem? We've been having a problem with this. Fix that while you're there. Or the other great one, oh, well, that's not the version we want. Wow, do I want to know that before I start that work? Right? But it happens. But it also gives that person a heads up, right? If I'm asking those questions and I'm going to package it up, they know they're going to see that package in a little bit of time. Hopefully they're carving some time out of their schedule so that when you're done with your job and you're happy with the package, that they're going to test it right away. So if there is a problem, the whole thing is still fresh on your mind and it's not 3 or 4 weeks later. Okay. So where are we today, right? We're getting a bunch of new options. So packaging kind of stopped being cool and getting a little bit stagnant, quite frankly, a few years ago. And now we're seeing with MSIX out, we're seeing the vendors investing in their tooling and doing more and more cool stuff. I'm seeing them start to do some things in their products along the line that I was talking about in terms of analyzing the application and helping provide you information about them. And that's really good. I think it's going to help you do your job better. Hopefully, with things like MSIX, packaging is really starting to become cool again. Right? So it's not this, yeah, we don't need to do packaging. Yeah, I did that once. It tends to be a career path for folks. Like start out on the help desk, go into the packaging team, do that for a while, and then move into other parts of IT. And that's good. I mean, it's always good to have that growth path along that. But packaging is starting to be fun with all of these options and all of the new things that are happening. So I look forward to that. I really think we do need to make sure that our C-level management understands why we're doing this stuff, because I think that kind of got lost here in the last couple of years. So you need to be ready to be able to answer those kinds of questions. Right? Hopefully what I talked about here today a little bit will help you with that. Well, I'm finishing early. 35 slides. How can I finish so early? That's amazing. Okay, well, we'll have a conversation. All right, so before I ask you anything, let's have a conversation. What the heck? All right, so how many of the folks here are working with MSIX today? Have at least played with it and tried it out? Okay, that's a good part of the audience. That's more than I expected. Okay, awesome, awesome. How many of you are config man folks? Right? I think we have a lot of those. Okay. You know, one of the things I failed to talk about in config, I think Microsoft's done a great job in terms of one of the things that they did. So I had this chart. I think I showed it here last year. And it was a chart about different package formats and different deployment options. And if you looked at that chart a couple of years ago, it had checkboxes in 2 different quadrants, right? If you had the older style applications, EXE, MSIs, or maybe an AppV, you were able to deploy those perfectly well with things like configuration manager or image management, you know, the traditional ways of delivering apps out there. But if you wanted to go with the modern apps, you really needed to go to modern management. You had to go to Intune to get those deployed out. And what Microsoft has done is they've extended in a couple of different directions. So if you want to stay with the traditional style of management, they now support all of the new formats as well. So you can, in your organization's journey to modernization, you can move horizontally and support all of those without having to change the way you deliver the apps out. At the same time, they extended the things that you could do through Intune to support the older style applications. So now if what you want to do in your journey is to move from traditional management to the modern management, you're able to do that as well. I think that's fantastic, right? So you don't have to make the big leap. Okay. I'm going to give Kurt more time. All right, so I have one ask of you before I leave. And the ask is this. I set up, last year, I created this thing called the MSIX report card. And this was my analysis on where things were in MSIX from soup to nuts. So this was released in like January. It's available up on my website at tmersion.com. I'm working on the report for next year. So what I did last year is I went through a whole bunch of applications that I see enterprises deploying, about 50 of them. We packaged them up in AppV and tested them, and because I'm an AppV guy, the apps that we had, they work in AppV. They're just fine. Took those same applications, ran them through the MSIX packaging tool without the PSF, and that's very important, and tested out the compatibility, and I showed those results in the report. Now, the reason I did not include the package support framework was because at that point, the package support framework was really only available to you in source code format. And I asked the question in the earlier session when we had about 80, 90 people in there, and only like 2 people were interested at all in downloading and building their own PSF using something like Visual Studio or VS Code. So, and that's exactly what I expected from the IT community. As I said in that session, if you're in IT, you probably took a computer programming class in college, and chances are you made a decision after that you did not want to be a developer, and that's why you're in the job you're in today. So that's why you're not likely to do that. So that's why I didn't include it. Now we do have it available in a binary form. So the answer for next year is going to be a little different. We'll do some stuff without the PSF. We'll do some testing with the PSF. We'll do some stuff with the different tooling vendors that include the PSF in their tooling. So I've been setting up a lot of framework on that. We're expanding the number of applications. And we've done some preliminary testing already to provide feedback to all of the tooling vendors to say, okay, here's kind of what we're seeing, and that's going to give them an opportunity between now and roughly December, when I probably start the real testing, that they can perhaps improve their tooling. And then we'll have those results coming out later next year. My ask for all of you, though, that's one of the charts from there, right? So it was very early on. What the heck? One of the things I've noticed here in the preliminary testing I've done, so I've done a lot of contributions to the packet support framework myself. So I've added them in. It's an open source thing for the community. And my thought process was, with the kind of changes I put in, based on what I saw from the initial testing, that we would probably take this 20%, it didn't need the PSF and worked great, and the others were, quite frankly, something I wouldn't deploy to an end user. And we would take that, and I was able to identify about 42% of the apps specifically against things that we've added to the PSF and the PSF can solve. And my thought process was, as I started doing this testing, that we're going to take this needle about things of MSIX compatibility, and we're going to get out to, I don't know, 35 maybe percent. Turns out maybe not so much. Okay? Because the things I detected in these applications were just at the surface, and once I fixed those, there are other problems behind them. The ones that are down in this category, we don't have fixes for yet. So it's probably not going to move the needle very far, but we still have a lot of time to get better tooling before I really do that testing, so we'll have to wait and see what we get. But we will have new results coming out next year. And my ask of you is to help us out on that. One of the other extensions we're doing it, we're trying to get feedback from the community. So at the beginning of the month, I opened up a couple of surveys. One is for developers. We want the developers to release their software in MSIX format. That stuff is going to be absolutely rock solid. It's going to work well. It's going to be easier for you if they do it. If the vendor gives you an option of the MSI or the MSIX, I'm going to want the MSIX, absolutely. Right? So we're trying to get some information from them. We're also trying to get some information from the IT pro about your experiences. For all of you who raised your hand when I said, have you been playing with it? We want to hear about those experiences. For those of you who haven't, we want to understand why not. This year being the first year in the survey, we've included a lot of places for open text so you can really express what it is that you're feeling. And quite frankly, we'll know better questions to ask when we do this again next year. Right? So if you go to m6conf.com, M6 like MSIX, but the number instead, right? You go there and you'll find the two surveys. Go ahead and take them. They're anonymous. You can add your name at the bottom. If you do, we'll send you an email when the results get posted. But I don't really care. We're not trying to tie your name to it. We're only using it for the purpose of getting that email out to you. All right. So please take the survey. Tell your friends. Have them take the survey too. When I first announced this, I actually got some feedback from several people in Microsoft who I don't even know that said, oh, hey, we'd like to see those results when you're done. So I think the more feedback we get in here, the more people that respond to the survey, I think the more weight that's going to have to Microsoft to help them understand what it is they need to do next. Okay. So thank you for being a great community. It's been a pleasure being here again today. And we'll turn things over to Kurt.